Hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us for our webinar. It's about, what is it, a minute after the hour, so I think we should just get started. So this webinar will be recorded. So if you have colleagues that couldn't make it to today's webinar, please feel free to send them the link. We will be sending out the link to the recording to everyone who registered for this webinar. So maybe just a little bit of sort of housekeeping rules, if you will, to start with. Just to maintain audio quality, we've muted everybody's microphones for now. But if you do have a question that you want to ask anytime at all during the webinar, there should be a chat button somewhere on your screen. So depending on whether you're logging into a PC or through your mobile device, you should be able to move around your mouse or tap the screen and find a way to send us a chat. We'll be monitoring the chat while we do the webinar, and we'll be able to answer your questions as we go along. Towards the end of the webinar, if we have time, we might be able to unmute microphones if you'd rather ask the question verbally. But yeah, it might be easier to just type out the message, the chat question as it occurs to you. All right. So with that out of the way, my name's Kwan. I've been with ProSoft for too long, since 2004. So I do have, when talking about legacy control systems here, these control systems were actually pretty cutting edge at that time. Okay, but as with everything to do with technology, all things have to come to an end. It's quite a testimony to Alan Bradley, Rockwell then, that the hardware has lasted this long and continues to run many facilities. We've got some numbers that pegs legacy control systems at about $65 billion still installed and still running, right? So there's a ton of control systems out there, and so the question is, why upgrade? Well, just like everything that's electronic, it won't last forever. The replacements are getting more and more expensive every year. There's a policy to actually increase the price of spare parts, and not only is it getting more expensive, it's also getting hard to find. And more importantly, people who are trained on these platforms are also getting harder to find, right? Finally, from upgrading to a more modern system, you might be able to realize some increased productivity, some increased ROI. So there's some good, positive reasons why migrate. So generally, for modernization or migration, we've got a few options. Well, the first one we've briefly talked about: just do nothing and hope nothing breaks down. Don't fix what isn't broken. This can be a very high risk option, right? Because there might be no downtime until there's nothing but unplanned downtime. Then you're left scrambling for spare parts and qualified service personnel. So that's something we don't recommend. The other option that you can is to rip and replace everything, right? This can be an elegant solution. You just modernize everything, but it can also be a very expensive solution. You end up having to budget for a very major project, having to budget for capex, and the migration is generally a major project which requires a long planned downtime. Right. So what we're trying to offer today is to give you some options on doing phased migrations, where you only migrate the bits that you need to migrate as and when budget is available, or as and when you certain parts of the system might be breaking down, right? So we're going to run through some of those options, and we're going to focus almost exclusively on legacy Allen Bradley systems today, right? So if you're coming from a Schneider type facility or a Siemens one, and you're looking at migration options, we've got those as well, but we won't be covering them today. Right? So feel free to reach out to your ProSoft representative if you want a discussion on those migrating those types of systems. Okay, so benefits. We've touched on this briefly. By doing a phased migration, you're generally able to test before committing fully to a new system because you're migrating only a small part of it. So you minimize also the migration risk. All migrations entail a certain amount of risk. Sometimes there's code that needs to be changed. Sometimes there's equipment that needs to be tested. Data that's not mapped correctly. So things like that. All those things can lengthen the amount of downtime that you plan for your migration project. Right. And in many cases, the phased migration approach also allows you to fall back, to your old system. If you budget a weekend and by Sunday night it's still not completed, very often you can simply fall back to your old system, take stock of what went wrong, and try again following weekend. Right. So that sort of fallback you don't get if you're embarking on a rip and replace major project. Okay, and of course the bits and pieces that you do migrate can then be used as spares for the legacy system that you haven't migrated yet, right? So you can have a win-win on both sides. So let me just run through some of the options that you have when migrating remote I/O solutions, right? So the top graphic, you have a typical SLC system, right, with the SLC processor right there, a little scanner module called the 747SN, if any of you are old enough to remember this, and a bunch of remote IOs all running off ASB remote IO modules, right? Even older systems would be running PLC5 processors, but with a similar architecture, ASB modules on each of your remote IOs. So one way to migrate this is to swap out your controller, right, into a control logic controller and maintain all your IOs, right? So we've got a gateway here called the ANX2. It's ANX2 ABDHRIO, which allows any Logix controller, could be a control Logix, could be a compact Logix, to control any remote IO drop, right? And that includes all the IOs that used to be local to the SLC, because all you need to do is to convert that to another ASB module, and that effectively becomes a remote IO drop. Okay, so fairly straightforward. No rewiring of IOs required, and thanks to this migration, you now have a spare SLC to be used in the rest of your plant. Similarly for PLC5, you can do the same thing. Drop in a Logix processor and change out the PLC5 to a 1771 ASB remote IO drop. So again, you can reuse all of your IOs. You now have a spare PLC5 processor, and everything's now running on the control Logix. Obviously, as budget permits, you can then start to migrate each and every one of these remote IO drops to Ethernet IP control Logix IOs. Okay, so that's another part of the phased migration that you can do. Okay, so that's one option that you can do for remote migrating remote IO systems. Here's another very common architecture. You might have an old PLC5 with the HMI, like an old panel view HMI running on RIO again, and these HMIs can get spoiled for a variety of reasons, as simple as maybe even the backlight goes off, right? Then the HMI is effectively unusable. So we can replace that with a brand new panel view plus running on Ethernet IP. And all you need to do is, again, drop in this ANX2 ABDHRIO. And without any change to your PLC5 program, you'll be able to use the new panel view plus touchscreen. I think we have a question. Do we have a question? There we go. Yeah, it's a statement from Dan. The 7071 ASBs and 47 ASBs are also no longer available. But that is very true. So if you do have a spare, for example, that first migration option can be an option. So what I'm trying to do is just lay out all the different migration paths that you can take. Some may work, some may not. At least you know what's available out there. So thanks for the comment, Dan. Right. So we talked a little bit about migrating all panel views. You can also just, if you look at the bottom drawing here, migrate the old processor, right? So if you want to keep your old panel view for whatever reason and migrate your PLC 5, you can also do that. Okay, we've got the ANX2 AVDHRIO can run in a mode in which it bridges Ethernet IP to DH Plus networks, right? And this can include, for example, a logic system on one end, several SLCs or PLC 5s on the DH Plus end. We're also able to run not just to have a control logics or a logics PLC system here. You can also have RS Logics 5 and 500 running on the PC, running on Ethernet IP, uploading and downloading programs to the DH Plus processor. Okay, so that's another option for you to migrate your DH Plus and RIO systems. And here's another mode that the gateway can run in. So if you have, say one of these old 1336 drives, they're so old I couldn't even find an icon for it. But one of these RIO type drives connected to a PLC 5. Okay, I've got a question here. So besides basic configuration, is there a separate data map, Ethernet IP to remote I/O? But I'll just read out the question here. It's a pretty lengthy one. So besides basic communication network configuration in the ANX module, is there a separate data map that maps between Ethernet IP and remote I/O that must be configured in the gateway? All right. Or once communicating, is the downstream AV remote I/O simply exposed? So it's just trying to gauge the level of device configuration required. So let me just bring up the relevant slide. So this was the relevant slide here. Yeah, thanks for the question, by the way. So the question is, if we've got an old PLC 5 system, right, and we drop in a new logics and map everything over, is there sort of some mapping required? Yes, there is. It does a degree of some amount of auto configuration. So it actually, when you have your processor running, the gateway can actually detect the digital configurations, right? But you will have to map in the block transfer reads and writes for your analog modules. So there's a video guide to show you exactly how to do that. It's on YouTube. But of course, tech support is also able to walk you through the steps required. Okay. So thanks for the question. Right. Let's see, where were we? So we had done the migration of HMIs. We've talked about connecting old DH Plus networks to new Ethernet IP networks. And yes, we were at this stage where we're talking about replacing old 1336 type RIO type drives with new PowerFlex Ethernet IP type drives. Okay, so again, we've got a bunch of drive profiles in here in the gateway that you can load that will make it compatible to the modern Rockwell drives. Some degree of mapping required, obviously, because you are moving from an old network, which was RIO, and you are moving to a modern network, Ethernet IP-based, tag-based network. So some degree of data mapping is certainly unavoidable. But we've done quite a lot of these migrations. So if you find yourself stuck, please feel free to call tech support, and we'll be happy to walk you through. Okay. So next, you probably aware that the 7094 ASB was recently discontinued by Rockwell. I think it was discontinued in 2018. The replacement is the AENTR, which is of course an Ethernet IP adapter. So again, the gateway, the ANX2 gateway, has a mode in which it emulates the ASB. So as far as the PLC5 is concerned, there's no programming change required. Okay? We will obviously have to have some mapping in the gateway to allow it to talk to the new I/O rack. But as far as the migration effort is concerned, all you need to do is to remove the old ASB adapter, replace it with a new AENTR, configure that to do a bit of mapping, and that's it. You're done. Right? The rest of the I/O is unchanged. Everything else is unchanged. Okay. So this is an example of a small migration project that you could probably fund just using operating expenditure, just OPEX, and you can see very clearly how if you don't do the mapping correctly and you can't reach somebody who can help you, it is very, very easy to simply fall back to the old system, right? So this is an example of something with a very clear, easy fallback plan. Okay, so all of these features require that the gateway function in different modes. So, all of it is summarized on the web page. The web page is not fairly complicated, but if you just Google search ProSoft DH Plus migration or ProSoft RIO migration, you should be able to reach it, and it'll give you a quick summary of what the gateway can do. Alrighty, good. So that's DH Plus and RIO out of the way. So let's talk about the next legacy network that Rockwell is now no longer supporting, DF1 serial networks. One of the key gateways that was being used was the 1761 NET ENI. The NET ENI essentially converts Ethernet to serial DF1. So in July 2017, Rockwell discontinued that module. So we've got a replacement from ProSoft. Looks quite a bit different, but it functions pretty much the same. We've got two flavors of this replacement gateway. If you're looking for a NET ENI replacement, the first one is the one you want, right? The DF1 ENI. We've got a lower cost version that does a specific thing, which I'm going to talk about shortly, called the messaging module. All right, so you've got the routing module and the rack messaging module. Okay, so if what you're looking to do is to upload and download programs, right, to any old PLC, could be any of the micrologics range, could be the old control logics processors that used to have a DF1 port. So all that, we used to do that over the 7061 NET ENI gateway. We can now do that. We can now upload and download programs using this PLX51 DF1 ENI, right? You cannot use that messaging module to upload and download programs. So this applies not just to, say, using RSLogix 500. It also applies to situations where you have factory talk, for example, right, that needs to communicate with a DF1 processor. Okay, you can simply use this gateway. You can also upgrade, again, legacy DF1 panel views. So this is a very common thing that we see, that an old SLC might have been connected with a serial cable to an old panel view, and when that panel view goes kaput, you can't find replacement anymore. So the ENI, PLX51 DF1 ENI gateway will allow you to connect any modern Ethernet IP panel view to a DF1 processor. So pretty straightforward. Now, when you have a situation where you have maybe a DCS that's running DF1, or maybe a bunch of RTUs running DF1 radio modem protocol, you can actually upgrade the main control room PLC from a DF1 based processor to an Ethernet IP based processor, okay, without upgrading everything out in the field. So this type of architecture is very common in, say, the wastewater industry, where you may have, a 24 remote RTUs out there, all running DF1 radio protocol, with a main control room, a main PLC, also running DF1 radio modem protocol. And if you had to upgrade it, right, to Ethernet IP, so this is the option that you have. Okay. So yeah, messaging between DF1 and Ethernet IP PLCs. Okay, that Ethernet IP PLC can be a logic system or even an SLC or a PLC5 system. You'd be able to directly MSG or message data to DF1 processors through this gateway. Okay. It's supported on both the the ENI version of the gateway and the MSG version of the gateway. Right. So in a nutshell, if you need simply to exchange data, both versions of the gateway will do it. Right. If you need to simply exchange data, but if you need to download programs, or if you need to connect an HMI, you will need the ENI module. So, so that, in short, is some of the phase migrations that phase migration options that you have available from ProSoft. Just as a quick recap, we've got several DH Plus and RIO migration options. You can migrate only the PLC or the IO. If you want to do both, then obviously it's a full rip and replace. You can migrate only a drive, only an HMI, or you could do all of the above, right? In different phases over different financial periods, right? So all that can be done using the NX2 gateway. As for DF1, if you need to connect to old processors, we've got a few options. Some allowing you to do full upload download of programs, and others simply allowing you to connect, and exchange data with other PLCs and other RTUs. All right. So so that brings us to about 25 minutes, about a half hour to our webinar. Happy to take any questions if you've got any.
Hey, Kwan, we did have a question within the first few minutes of the beginning of the webinar.
Okay.
If you look under Q&A, let's see, under answer.
I saw that. Yeah, from Raymond. Yeah. So the question: why is FactoryTalk client slow going through the ProSoft DH Plus Ethernet gateway? So that's a good question. We've seen this in. Just going to bring up the appropriate architecture here, so that everyone knows what we're talking about. Okay, so this is probably the closest we have. So if you can imagine that control logics processor to be a FactoryTalk system, right? Running Ethernet IP, talking to a bunch of PLC5s on the DH Plus network. So it really depends on how the FactoryTalk processor is set up and how many how much data it's grabbing from the DH Plus side. We found that when you have many PLC5 processors, okay, it does hit a bottleneck. The DH Plus network is a fairly slow network, runs only about 230 kilobits per second, compared to Ethernet IP, right, which runs right now up to gigabits. So different projects, I think, have different limitations. So Raymond, if you could reach out to tech support, we'll be happy to see what your exact circumstances are, and we'll help you fix it. A new question from Alejandro: is it to use the PLX55 DF1 ENI to communicate a PLC with OPC servers like Kepware or Metricon? No, not exactly. So the PLX51 DF1 ENI simply allows you to use an Ethernet IP system, so maybe an Ethernet IP laptop, right? Laptops these days don't come with serial ports, right? Or it could be an Ethernet IP PLC, like the control logics. It allows those systems to connect to an old DF1 serial system. Okay, so if you need to communicate to OPC servers like Catware or Matricon, we do have a solution for that using OPC UA. So if you can just do a Google search ProSoft OPC UA, you'll see our solution there. And Alejandro, just feel free to give us a call. We'll be happy to talk to you directly to explain to you what the OPC module does. You're welcome, Alejandro. Okay, question from Scott. Are there any plans to allow NX2 to communicate from PLC5 to more than 4 Ethernet IP VFDs? At the moment, not yet. You got obviously always get another NX2. Yeah, but if you have a specific need, yeah, do reach out to your ProSoft rep, and we'll see what we can do. At the moment, there is a limitation of 4.
We have a question in the chat.
You do? Okay. Let's have a look. Here we go. A question from Danos. I said earlier the ASB is now not available. Do you have a solution for that? Ideally, an adapter that would put the PLC5 IO on Ethernet IP. Yeah, unfortunately not. The Ethernet, the PLC5 1771 platform is very much legacy. So we won't be developing any solutions specifically on the 1771 platform. Yeah, so unfortunately the answer there is no. You could always upgrade that one remote IO rack to 1756 maybe. Maintain the remaining 1771s and upgrade them as time allows. That'll allow you to save some what's the right word? Salvage, right? Some old 1771 ASBs to be used as spares. Hope that answers your question, Danos. Cool. Question from Joe. So for routing from a Honeywell using the ENI, what is the limit for the number of DH plus addresses? Okay, I don't quite understand what you mean. So the Honeywell example that we had with the ENI was actually a serial example. So that's serial. So there's no DH plus actually involved. So I'm not sure what you mean, Joe. So we'll let Joe clarify what he means. I'm happy to take more questions. Right, gotcha. DF1 devices. Okay, is there a number limit to the number of DF1 devices? That's a good question. I don't have the number on me at the moment. Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that, Joe. Sorry. I thought it was 1-to-1, but I could be mistaken. Because the NetENI was 1-to-1, and this essentially is a direct replacement for the NetENI. So I'll have to get back to you on that, Joe. Sorry about that. Yes, we do have your contact information, Joe, so that's not an issue. We'll probably email you in the next 30 minutes with the answer. So do we have any other questions from anyone else? Oh, I've got one here. So with the device configured to bridge Ethernet IP to downstream 1771 IO, are other third-party Ethernet IP systems supported, or is this only geared towards upstream control logics? Okay, so in a nutshell, it supports class 1 Ethernet IP connections. So if you have a system that's, an Ethernet IP system that also supports class 1 IO connections, yes, it will be supported. Haven't seen many in the market though that do class 1. It's almost always just upstream control logics, upstream compact logics. Yeah, it's almost always Rockwell. Okay, I hope that answers your question. I don't have your name there. Right, any other questions? While waiting, if it turns out that it's inconvenient for you to type, maybe you're on the road or something, feel free to reach out to us separately, either to tech support or through your ProSoft representative with any follow-up questions. We'll be more than happy to help you out. Okay, we have got one more question. So from Neil, can the ANX ABRDHRIO module degrade over time, resulting in slow data exchange? Pretty unlikely. I would even call it flat out no. The data mapping doesn't. If that doesn't change, if the volume of data doesn't change, and your network traffic, especially on the DH plus side, also doesn't change. Yeah, I would expect data speeds to be consistent. So obviously, if something does change, we'll see what the nature of the change is. Again, Neil, so this is related to an earlier question about FactoryTalk being slow. So if you've got a specific a problem, do contact tech support. They'll ask you for a bunch of files, some diagnostic files, configuration files, setup files, or something. Just from there, we'll be able to tell if there is a problem that can be fixed. It's normally just a setup problem. Okay. So question from James: is there a module from Ethernet IP to Profibus? Oh, definitely. Okay. So we haven't covered any Profibus at all today. But if you type, maybe say ProSoft Profibus, into Google search, it'll give you a lot of hits. And Profibus is one of our key third-party networks that we convert to. So we have lots and lots of solutions for that. So James, if you'd like to reach out to maybe tech support or to your ProSoft rep, he'll be able to advise exactly what you can use. We have a confusing number of Profibus solutions. Question from Raymond: what is the latest firmware for the ANX2? Oh wow, I have no idea. So I'm just going to open up. Okay, you probably can't see anything on my screen, so sorry about that. I'm just going to open up the web page, which is ProSoft DH Plus migration. Click the first link. Download. Okay, so we used to have. I'm just going to. Here we go. So we used to have the firmware available for download on the website. It's no longer there for some reason. But again, it's no secret. So just reach out to tech support, and we'll be happy to email you the latest file. The latest version of the ANX2 supports the Flex IO migration. This, where was it? This one. Yeah. So Raymond, yeah, you can just reach out to support at ProSoftTechnology.com, support at ProSoft-technology.com. We'll be happy to email you the latest firmware file. So any more questions? So if there's nothing else, we'll bring this webinar to a close. Thank you so much for spending 40 minutes with us this morning or afternoon, depending where you are. Again, this webinar has been recorded, even the Q&A. So we'll be sending out this link to the recording pretty soon. All right. Thank you, and hope you have a great day wherever you are. Goodbye.